You, Ms. Mace.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our witnesses this morning for your service to our country and for being here and spending some time with us today. Every time a colleague of mine on the other side of the aisle doesn't want to have an ideological discussion or discussion of real policy that makes real differences in the lives of the men and women in our country, whether they're serving our nation or otherwise, they just invoke the word Trump. It's just Trump, Trump, Trump. That's all they can talk about. And quite frankly, I find it tiring and nauseating because we have a real opportunity here to make a difference in the lives of every American, and especially for those that are literally putting their lives on the line to serve our country. And, I'm one of the only Republicans up here on the Hill who has talked about Roe v. Wade, who has talked about finding common ground, who has talked about moderating on abortion and finding out where both sides can find agreement. And there's so much where we can find agreement on, but I have yet to find one Democrat who's willing to work with me on the issue of abortion and finding common ground. And the minute you ask them what their limits are on abortion, they won't answer the question. They flee the room, they get the heck out of the way because they don't want to answer the question, because the left often has absolutely no limits on abortion. That's a travesty here today, too, and shouldn't really be the point of the conversation, because unfortunately, the policies of this administration, the results speak for themselves. Recruiting is down, retention is down, morale is down, while demonizing the military and our veterans is up. And I remember when I was graduating from the Citadel a long time ago, 25 years ago, my own father's concerns about the military. We didn't have the word woke back then, but he saw what was changing. He spent 28 years in the United States Army. He is the most decorated living graduate the Citadel has ever seen in its history. And I remember the conversations we would have and how much the military had changed. And in 25 years, it's way off base now with some of the policies we're seeing, particularly with this administration. And so, the United States military has long been held to the American public as the most respected and trusted institutions of our country, and rightfully so. It's revered. The standing exists because they've remained above the fray of partisan politics, but politics has now gotten into our military, and we've seen the demonization of our active duty military and our veterans. And so I find this conversation deeply disappointing because, as was mentioned earlier, I believe by Mr. Lohmeyer, about lethality and why qualifications actually matter, because when you're in the trenches, when you're in war, it doesn't matter what you look like. So my first question is going to go to Mr. Lohmeyer. Talking about lethality, you've been in the trenches, you've been in war, you've been in combat theater. Does the color of your skin matter when you're in the trenches, when you're in combat?
The answer is no, it doesn't matter, and we've sometimes joked in veteran circles that the last thing that our active duty troops currently wearing the uniform say when they're getting deployed downrange to the desert or to Eastern Europe is, geez, I wish I had another diversity, equity, and inclusion training before hitting the road.
Does gender matter when you're in war, when you're in combat, when you're in battle?
No, I'd say no again, but it also depends on strength and depends on your profession, and I have no problem saying that. That's why we have standards in place.
Does sexual orientation matter if you're
I'd
wearing
say
uniform?
no, it does not incidentally matter, but if it becomes a matter of activist political orientation, then it could influence the military workplace.
I don't think anyone believes having people from diverse backgrounds in the military is a bad thing. I haven't heard any of that today. I think everybody in the country would welcome diversity no matter what industry they're in. Can you explain specifically how what we're seeing in terms of DEI programs today that goes far beyond that? Mr. Lohmeyer.
You mentioned the issue that Trump's name is invoked as a talking point, an easy go-to talking point.
To not talk about the issues of policy.
And I'll use that to answer your question, Congresswoman. I had a base commander who, in the lead up to an election, threatened forfeiture of pay for all of the members of his base if he caught a whiff of Trump's support in the lead up to the election. In my view, that's court-martialable. It's illegal. It's a violation of the Hatch Act. And it was a direct, express outcome of his ideological worldview. He was a friendly guy. He was loved and respected by a lot of people, but he created a climate of fear, and his top issues were, and by the way, Heritage Foundation and Congressman Waltz just recently did a report of the National Independent Panel of Military Service and Readiness, and I've got feedback right here from people in the uniform. Active military members' trust in the military is declining for the overt politicization of the military workplace, transgender policies, withdrawal from Afghanistan debacle, reduction in physical fitness standards to even the playing field for diversity's sake. So all of the things that we've heard today aren't necessarily the issues of progressivism that are hurting the military. They're in fact what our military members are saying are the issues for which they're losing their trust in their senior leaders. So when they hear a Mark Milley say, well, I want to learn about white rage, you at least get half of the force shutting off and losing trust in their military leadership. Now, he was chairman of the Joint Chiefs when he said it. When the Secretary of Defense says things, there issues a policy memorandum saying that it was a Supreme Court decision that's hurting our recruiting and readiness, when they themselves have been speaking up for 2 years saying, no, that's not the reason we don't want to stay in the service. Then there's a divide that takes place, and it's that divide that I think we've been invited here to talk about. And so that's my answer to that question. I think that's at the heart of the matter, is that ideology divides. It's always divided. And none of the panel members up here seem to have any issue with the idea of naturally occurring diversity, which has been a beautiful and lovely part both of nature and of the blessing of the United States of America. We are naturally a diverse group of people, and it's because we have the freedom to think and speak clearly and share those views. And ideology also shuts that down too. And it's an enforced equality of thought, of expression. It's discriminatory.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.